Alrighty, you guys. Welcome back to another episode of These People Are Idiots. Technically, this is going to be out of order. We did film another episode about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'm still halfway through checking it for bathroom breaks and pauses and edits and all that. So it is going to be a little bit longer on that one. It is a 7-hour episode, but that being said, there's going to be some changes happening on the channel moving forward because that postponing of the episode and that procrastinating has come with a level of craziness on my end. But before monologuing too hard and getting into that, Cyprian, how have you been?
Politics proceeds apace, and DC local government nerds, because DC is insider politics, but there's a lot of nerds attracted to insider politics. They at least recognize there's something wrong with local government in DC. That's my big message. They're receptive to it. Good.
Hell yeah. The nerds are going to be the ones to save us. Do you have any specific examples, or are we going to keep it broad for a moment?
Well, Proposition 83, ranked choice voting. It's not going to do what they think it will, but it is a recognition that the current system is insider politics and it's not popular with people. Their big slogan is the winner of the election should have at least 50% of the vote.
Shit. Is that basically what ranked choice voting boils down to?
No.
Can you explain that one a little bit? Because I've heard the term, but I don't know too much.
Ranked choice voting is your first vote goes to this candidate, then the second candidate, then the third candidate, etc. It's a very complicated system, and depending on how the second or third or fourth votes are weighted, it could mean all sorts of different things. So it means that to effectively win an election, it's a lot easier to simply get a small group of people to do the exact same thing. And that's the way smaller factions that might not be the most popular can still win without necessarily getting most people to agree with them. They just make their own people do the exact same thing.
I can see that. Interesting.
That tends to come with a big downside that if the goal is to make people do the exact same thing in the exact same order, that's going to come with a lot of pressure for social conformity.
We don't have any recent examples of that in our modern history, do we?
Whereas a runoff election, you had that in a lot of one-party states in the American South when it was all Democrats. There are the Democrats in favor of this presidential candidate and the Democrats in favor of that presidential candidate. So you had two effective factions within the Democratic Party that everybody knew about because they would be the two leading candidates on the final ballot. A runoff election, okay, pick the top two or top three people and then have a second election. I think that would work a lot better than ranked choice voting, because there you still have a clear choice for voters, and you don't have the pressure for controlling people the same way you do in ranked choice voting.
I can see that. That's interesting. I mean, yeah, I get sense. It's just, the voting stuff for all the politics that I know gets so complicated in my head with all the different propositions and how it turns and how it twists and how it goes. And that's also part of something that scares me is I feel like it's all these big changes that could just kind of happen under the radar of a lot of people, even if you're really invested in politics.
Most major changes are so under the radar that regular politics nerds don't notice them. You had a few econ and accounting people jumping up and down, screaming that, the change in the way the government calculates spending cuts is just going to enable reckless spending and is a bad idea. But almost nobody else paid attention because accounting is not exactly most people's idea of a fun time.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's why we need the nerds.
So there's a lot of stuff that is not secret, highly influential, that effectively is secret because so few people care about it or can feel they can understand it.
Literally how I feel about the Hamas plan on their website, where it's like step by step how we're going to overthrow America in the colleges. I'm like, that's page 2. Why don't more people talk about that? Why are we just all... So much of the crazy is really out in the open. It's just a matter of them moving your attention one place or another and having it diverted.
Yes, that's one of the most powerful aspects of propaganda. The goal isn't necessarily to persuade someone of what you're talking about, it's to shift their attention to where you want it to be or away from something you don't want them to look at.
Which might be a good segue into some of the things I've learned recently about the nature of the protests and the riots. One of the things that's making me want to back out of the local political end of things is having met my first former Antifa member, and a big revelation that came to me that just made so much fucking sense is this guy, he was essentially a dealer and, selling, I don't know what he was selling, it's not my business, but that's how he was involved with the Antifa crowd, right? Is they were money. At first it started with, we're going to stomp some Nazis, and then he very quickly realized it wasn't that. But one thing that he came to learn, without me being given any specifics, because very well guarded, and I'm not trying to get this guy in trouble because I have a heart for this guy because he's trying to do the right thing. As crazy as some of the stories I'm going to share with you in a little bit are, I do believe this is a guy who wants to do the right thing. But one of the things that scared him off was his realization that whenever there's a riot on one side of Portland or a riot on one side of the Blue City, we always think about the police and the right, the Proud Boys and the Patriot Prayer, and then we think about the left with Antifa and BLM, and then the media, and we think about the chaos and the fire. And then you kind of realize we never ask about what's going on the other side of the city. And coming to learn that it's not necessarily that Antifa is controlled by criminal elements, it's that it's manipulated and used by criminal elements. And that in a lot of these cases, what's probably happened more likely than not is mass human trafficking events and drug trafficking and trade and robberies. Because when all your police and all your media and all your people are on one side of the city, you could drive a truck full of fucking kids down the highway without having to worry. They're all tied up. And again, there was no specific examples of this. It was all left very broad. But he believed it, and I believed it. And a lot of this is a distraction. And for a long time, I didn't want to hear that, because hearing that something is a distraction, to me, it being an Antifa or BLM translated to what you care about isn't important. And I think that it is, because I think it was said best to us in the meeting prior that this BLM era riotous behavior and going into what it is now is a mass PTSD event. And I don't even know where I started with that. This has just been such a heavy fucking week of a lot of big realizations and a lot of big understandings and a lot of big decisions, big changes. The distractions, they can be something so minor, from something on a piece of paper meant to make you think something else, to something so big as the people in charge getting together the youth of all the blue cities and all of the angry men and the homeless and the criminals and the drug dealers, and having them go fucking Arkham City downtown and just smash and destroy, and to get in groups and to paint yourself up like a Mad Max warrior and to make yourself a weapon and to load your fucking guns and to go strike fear in 50% of the population. Well, what? Potentially children are being trafficked and more fentanyl is moving across the country. And to everyone like myself or this guy or anyone else actively or formally engaged, we contributed to that. because in playing into that distraction, we played into the plan. And how many kids died because of us? How many people overdosed because of us? How many people are going to be locked in the back of a fucking trailer whenever the next university decides to burn next week? Doesn't seem like any of this shit is fucking worth it. But distractions come with a cost.
Yes.
Yeah, it's... And do you mind if I monologue for a minute to tell the story of what happened there? Because I don't want to feel like I'm cutting you off too much today. I just feel like it's a story that I really want to get out. And I also want him to see this because it was given to me on really good advice that I needed to block and walk away from this individual. And that if I were to run into him, that I needed to treat him like a loaded gun pointed at me. And to smile and to be kind, but to make sure that I get out of there unscathed. And that really hurt because I met this guy after I lost my job. I went to a new job and I met this guy in the training room. And I went to this job saying, I'm not going to make any friends here because I was going back to work in Eugene. And I was just like, fuck this town. I'm not trying to make any new connections. I know that meeting people can lead to a really bad place here. I'm surrounded by drug addicts. I don't want to start using again. But there was just something about this guy in the training room, you know, and he had even mentioned that he'd studied Judeo-Christian values and shit. And I was just like, oh, there's something about this guy. You know, he was a little more put together than the rest. And I was like, okay, you know, maybe on smoke break, this could be a guy that I could talk to, right? So I did. And before even mentioning anything going on with my channel or who I was, he told me that he'd been a part of Antifa at one point briefly. And that he was pissed and that he wanted to start a new group called the Pride Panthers. Straight guy. But the reason he wanted to do that was because he was telling me that people in Antifa were going around town flashing guns in his friends' faces and that people were getting doxxed and attacked and that there were really violent incidents happening downtown. And he's like, I'm tired of the people in my life not feeling safe. And I want to protect them. So he tried to get me into this group that he was forming, which I backed him off of it because I told him about the channel. And I'm like, look, I'm creating this channel for people like you. You can have an outlet. You can have a place. Do you have some shit about what's going on with those motherfuckers here? Come tell me about it. Come tell the world about it. Let's fucking get it out there because... You know, he said the exact same thing to me that I said to my husband once in my fucking pissed off fury was I literally told my husband once, I wanted to go to one of these protests and I just wanted to kick one of these motherfuckers in the chest and say, fuck you, you Nazi faggot fuck. And it sounds crude, but it's like, why would you want to say that? A, because you recognize that Antifa, they don't combat Nazis, they are Nazis. Just learned about black shirts the other day. Apparently black shirts were a thing too on top of brown shirts. So more historical relevancies than I thought. And then why do you want to call him a faggot? Even though he's a straight guy wanted to defend his fucking gay friends. Because he was sick and tired of having his fucking voice monitored. He knew he wasn't homophobic. He would fight and die for the gay people in his life. So if he wants to fucking say faggot, he can fucking say faggot. And, you know, there's just a lot of me in this guy where it was just that rebellious sense of fuck you and I'm fucking tired of their bullshit and they're taking over our community and they fucked me over so much and they've caused me so much pain and trauma. And, you know, I got to start going to his house and smoking with him and hanging out and really getting to know him. And it was like, I suddenly understood what it was like hanging out with me after I got out of Antifa. You know, he's coked out, drunk, relapsing after having just got out of rehab, losing his kids, losing his wife. And he's checking out the blinds every couple of seconds. He's always looking behind his shoulders. He's jumping at every noise. He's scared. Like he's spending most of the time crying, red in the face, and like not uncontrollably sobbing, but like there's just a sadness building up. And sometimes it just can't hold it back. He's just wiping it away, you know? And, you know, I think I spent the better part of 2 weeks convincing him of Fed. And I don't even think I fully convinced him. You know, in a fucked up kind of way, it's like as much as I trust you and call you a friend, even with you, there's always this back of my head voice that's like, can I trust him? Did someone send him from DC? Is he? And like, just want to throw it out there. Even I know you weren't. But even if you were, you're the kind of Fed that I want following me because you're a nice guy and I feel like we could be friends afterwards. But it's that level of paranoia that it leaves you with is a very, very, very real thing. And I really was trying to convince him, like, hey, I'm not coming to kill you. I'm not a Fed. I really am like you. I really do understand your struggle and I want to help you. And like we were watching videos. He didn't even know the music video angle of my channel. And he was showing me music videos that I had already posted on my channel and actually showed me a couple new ones. And like, you know, we sat and we bullshit and we smoked and we laughed and we shared stories and we hugged and like I sang with this dude. We were just crying at one point and some Tom McDonald came on, you know. There was a song called Church and we just cried and we sung. And whenever it seemed like he was starting to feel like he was feeling silly and he stopped singing, I picked it up. And I said, we're going to keep this song going through to the end. And I've never had an experience like that before with anybody. So I mean this when I say this. Everything I'm about to say, I love this guy. And I wish him the best. But that means I'm going to have to walk away and leave this message for him to see and to share this with people. And to say that I'm not going to go and blast your shit. But this story needs to be heard because I know there's others like you. Because there was others like me. But you know, with all this anger with Antifa and shit, there was a lot going on, and I tried to help him get a job at my old job. I was like, hey, you know, we're working with a bunch of drug addicts right now. You're trying to clean your shit up. Let's go work in a kitchen. You know, I mean, even though there's still drinking and shit there, you know, it'll be better for you. So I tried to hook him up with that. He went in like 1 or 2 days and dropped off after that, got fired. Wasn't allowed into detox. The second or third time, I think, and, you know, just really feeling like he was losing everything. Friends stopped answering the phone, but he calls me freaking out when I'm at work the other day, and he's kind of going off, and I'm just kind of sitting here like, dude, I've done so much for you. I have so much going on in my own personal life. I've been, not only am I trying to help him, but I'm helping all these other people in my life, and all this crazy shit's going on. But then he starts talking to, when he realizes that I'm not giving him what he wants, he starts talking about throwing himself in the road and killing himself. And I'm just like, dude, every year of my life since I've left high school, someone is threatening suicide around me. And most of the time it's genuine. Sometimes it's not, but I'm always like trying to hold someone from being on the edge, which again is probably why my YouTube channel is the way it is. Like, if it's going to be a full-time job, I may as well make it a full-time fucking job. But this is the first time I ever fucking told someone, I'm just like, you need to deal with your fucking shit by yourself. I'm sorry nobody is telling you this right now, but I'm not going to fucking hold your hand through this. It is not going to be my fucking fault if you do anything. And essentially, you need to grow the fuck up. And that I'm not your lifeline, and I'm not going to be your crutch. And just be like, if you go off the deep end right now, I'm not going to be responsible for this because I've done everything to try and help you. And I told him, I'm like, let's take account what I've done for you these last few weeks in the short time that I've known you. In a time where I didn't even expect to make a friend. And he said, fuck it, I'm going to do it. He says, it's either that or I'm going to go start the Pride Panthers. And I'm like, fucking hold on, dude. So I go tell my bosses, I'm like, hey, I got to go talk on the phone. You know, dude's on the edge. I got to talk him down. And when I call him, he's in tears, freaking out, saying they won't let him into the detox clinic. And he tells me he got into a scrap with a Antifa member the night before. And this Antifa member was apparently hanging out at the same bar that he was at. And if it's the same bar I'm thinking of, he shouldn't have been hanging out there anyways, because he knows damn well it's a leftist bar. But this person basically started confessing to molesting a 16-year-old. Or was it 16-year-old? No, 6-year-old. Sorry, not 16-year-old, 6-year-old. And, you know, obviously this triggers him, and he's like, what the fuck did you just fucking say? And dude just kind of looks at him, and he's just like, what, you're a granny fucker? What's so different from what you do than what I do? Because I guess this dude had slept with this guy's mom, who was an older woman. And he's just sitting here like, what I do is nowhere nearly remotely comparable to fucking a child. And having pushed that button and not stopping running his fucking mouth, that ex-Antifa member that active Antifa member almost died. And what was told to me over the phone was that story. I kept laying into him and I couldn't stop. And he told me over the phone, I don't know if I killed somebody. I tell this story because I know that nobody is dead. On the off chance that I am wrong, which I don't think I am, I'm saying this openly, but if anyone wanted to come knock on my door for that, whether you are an Antifa or a pedophile aside, murder is murder. And I yelled at him. I told him, you are a fucking idiot. I gave you a place to talk. I gave you a choice. I saw what was going to happen with you, and I gave you every option under the sun. I got you a new job. I helped drive you around. I've helped talk you off the edge. I said, if you want to come and you want to expose these motherfuckers, I will give you an unlimited amount of time to come and get that off of your chest. I said, what you did will destroy everything that I have done. Because if this guy's sitting here telling me on the phone, oh, I killed an Antifa member, and I'm the ex-Antifa guy, and now I'm implicated in that, what was all of this worth? Because I don't condone that. So I told him, where the fuck are you? And he said, I'm outside the detox clinic. So I go to the detox clinic, and he's there with a bottle of vodka in his hand. And I went there with the full intention, if I have to knock him out, if I have to restrain him, if I have to break his arm, if I have to do anything, if he tells me that he did something to him, I will do it. But I think it was the meth, and I think it was the fear, and I think it was the paranoia. And after talking to him and walking around, it generally did. I don't think he killed anybody. I think he got pretty fucking close. But it did kind of help paint a picture of, for a lot of these people, it's not going to be as simple as walking away. A lot of these people are going to want to walk away and fucking kill Antifa members. That's the reality. It's not as simple of, oh, I saw the error of my ways. Now I'm going to go try to make friends with everybody and do good. I'm starting to realize that's a little more rare. And I feel like I hate saying that because it feels like a pat on the back. But I'm saying that because this is just, it's all nuance. Something can't just be one thing, right? It's like the detransitioners. Like, they all have the same story, but they're all unique. A lot of the story was my story, but his situation and his outcomes were very unique. I have to blurt the name out. Fuck. But, yeah, that put a change in me of things that should be going forward in the channel, of how I should be operating. I can't be Lois Laning my shit on a local level. I'm not trying to go snooping around in people's business. I know criminal elements are at play. I know there are human trafficking elements at play. I do not know names. I do not know specifics. And you know what? I'm fucking content with that. Because I don't want to turn back into that. I know what happens to that type of person, and I don't want to spiral like that. Because in the same way that he's still fighting a war, I'm realizing with my channel, it's like, am I still trying to do that? I'm talking about Renaissance instead of war and revolution, but I don't know. It's like, well, I still want to do things like have these discussions and like make videos with fire and flames to show people they're not alone. At the same time, it's like, it can't be the focus anymore. Not if I'm going to demonstrate that we can move forward and that we can do better and that we can look towards brighter days. It's been a very dark week.
as bad as things were in the past, there were also moments of brightness. And some of the greatest insights into human nature have come from times of great human evil, because the contrast between good and evil becomes a lot clearer when evil is much more congregated and much more overt.
It makes me so sad. We actually had a podcast filmed, and it was over 4 hours. Like, I sat over there, he sat over here, and I think it was a sign from God that when I went to do the audio that night and do the edits, there was no audio whatsoever. It was just mouth moving, and you couldn't hear anything. And in the grand scheme of things, that was good, because a lot of it was, hi, my name is blank so and so. Come and find me. This is who I am. I want to fight you. Meet me in the streets. Trying to explain to him the concept of Antifa being a cult without cult leaders, and that it revolves around martyrs. He just kind of laughs at me and says, there's nothing wrong with martyrdom, so long as you die for a good cause.
There's a difference between dying for a purpose and dying just because you want to die.
The theme that he wanted to bring to the podcast that he kept bringing up, and I think it was a very good point, but I don't think he understood it. Violence versus vigilance. When is it time to be violent, and when is it time to be vigilant? He brought up that point 30 times in 4 hours. But think of everything that I've just told you. Cognitive dissonance.
There's a pattern with a lot of child soldiers that they were manipulated by adults into doing violence for whomever. But when they enter civilian life, after the fighting is over, they never learned anything other than how to be violent to people. So they fall back on violence because that's all they know.
And that's this guy, because you know what this guy's story is? He's seen, kind of like me. He's been around the drugs. He's been around the gangsters. He's seen that side of life, and he saw it very early on. And again, his specifics are his own. That is not my place to discuss. But what I will say is that a lot of it has to do with what I've been talking about on the channel and trying to show people through the music videos and demonstrate is, for this dude, this fight started long before Antifa. Just like my fight started long before Antifa. Antifa is just the group that it finds the people who need a sense of belonging, who need to feel like they're being taken care of, and it just weaponizes them. Because, like I said, this guy, he's just a straight guy. He has some gay friends and trans friends who he's really scared for, and it's like, God bless you, man. Thank you for that. But if you go and I told him, by the end of that, I'm just like, what did you do? I'm like, you're a bald white man that just punched an Antifa member. It's your word against his. You don't know these people. You're not in their circles. You can't plead your case. He's going to go and tell every single person that he knows that a neo-Nazi beat him up at the bar so that they don't think about the pedophilia. Congratulations. This is a war. I do agree with that. But that means that people need to think tactfully. And we need to understand violence versus vigilance. And I valued the vigilance. Even the vigilance within himself. The thing that fucking got me about this guy, too, from the very get-go, recovering narcissist. And that's not a term that he fucking told me. That's a term that I gave him. Because he realized that his narcissism was used, that it destroyed his life with his partner, with his kids, that it was his demon, And, he would sit there and he would just over-explain everything to me where I'm like, dude, you don't got to explain every little bit of your thought process to me. It's totally fine. Like, I see you for who you are. And he's just like, no, man. He's just like, you don't understand how much I've ruined my life. This is me practicing radical honesty. I have to actively practice radical honesty as much as possible until I can get it right. And son of a bitch, he was radically honest. And that's what I want to do with this, not to blast him or to talk shit, but to leave this here in case he ever sees it, because he knows that I'm radically honest too. And I want him to keep up with that. But these people need help. And I don't think my place on this channel is to necessarily... Instead, I want people to reach out to me. I would love to talk with former members and people involved with this, because it's nice to talk with people who've been there and seen some shit too, and to give them a place. But at the same time, it's like, I can't be this guy's therapist. I can't be the one to save him. That's going to fall on the therapist. That's going to fall on the psychologist. That's going to fall on people like teachers, making sure we don't get more kids like this. And I feel like I want that to be more of my personal goal, is to help them and to help the people in those fields kind of like come in and have an examination. And then if people like him want to come in from the outside and look too, because it's growing and it's going good, then fantastic. But, you know, I really think a lot of this channel is for the therapist and for the psychiatrist. As much as it is politics, I really want the people out there in those fields to really examine this type of behavior and to have a lens into this type of world, because, well, a lot of like therapists and psychologists I know come from fucked up backgrounds. There's so many different sides of the world that we never get to see, no matter who we are. And I think the more that we can like come together and explain that to other people and to depict it artistically, be it musically or visually or whatever have you, I think that's got to be part of the Renaissance, is people building, showing what the world looks like through their eyes, essentially. You know, like I did a little video about aliens the other day, the Over the Cotton Hills video. And in that video, I'm just kind of thinking, I'm like, what's the world look like through my buddy Larry's eyes? You know, like what's he thinking about? What's his trauma? What's his demons? What's his wonder? And trying to get into his head. And like, I'm thinking about that, and I'm like, I kind of want to make music videos for other people now too. You know, I've gotten into my head, now let's try to get into other people's heads and to kind of show that out there. And I would rather do that than everything that I've done this week, because that's where I find my happiness, my renaissance, my peace, and everything else has just been, well, I've been happy to do it and be there for him. Fuck, it's taken a toll. Like, I'm not Andy No. You know, God bless him, but I am no fucking Andy No. I can't just be the Antifa guy. I want to be a guy who came from Antifa and then went on to do some cool shit. But I can't be the Antifa guy. Just the same as I don't want him to be the Antifa guy. As much as he thinks that they're cowardly and don't have any control over him, they completely control his life. He almost committed one of the gravest sins outside of fucking a child. Murder. And if he sees this, if you see this, man, you have an opportunity to pull back. But that means pull the fuck back and walk away from those motherfuckers. Treat them like they have a gun to your head. Smile, ignore them, turn around, walk the fuck away. Because they are going to weaponize every single thing you do. Because again, you are just another bald white man to these people. You do not matter. The story that they create off of you, that is what matters. And that advice goes to anyone else who may be feeling they're in that same situation. It's weird that it went down the way that it did, but
I'm not actually so surprised. A lot of the people who are drawn into groups like Antifa are either sincere idealists, people from profoundly troubled backgrounds, people full of hate. There's a lot of reasons, and a lot of them just have a lot of people who are impulsive and used to violence and who can't stop being violent. If people are used to, oh, my friends think violence is great, your entire childhood, and when you become an adult, it becomes really hard to back off of that. That's one reason why gangs are so persistent. They take in kids teach them to do bad stuff to other people, and then those adults have a hard time adjusting to not doing bad stuff to other people.
And it's like, in his head, he's not doing a bad thing. In his head, he's the protector. He's protecting his town. He's protecting his community. He's protecting the children.
And
Daria,
I mean, it's the life of one pedophile versus the excuses offered to the members of a low-level gang/terrorist organization. Normally, it would be an easy choice. Well, okay, maybe not, because usually the courts would work. But the courts in Oregon have been barely functional.
Oh, I mean, they had like an OnlyFans Antifa member ringleader who I guess was engaged in a bunch of violence, and I think Andy Ngo was involved in the trial. 14 days in federal prison, I think it was, for riotous behavior.
The amazing thing is that they finally prosecuted her. There were so many incidents that happened where it was just a revolving door.
And didn't they like cover the jury too? Like they didn't show the jury or something like that. There was like a comparison. People were saying like, I haven't seen this since the Manson trial. And again, it was surface level. I didn't want to get too deep. It was just kind of like of course. But again, this is not punished here. Antifa's behavior should be punished because they are not exempt from the law. They're trying to maybe contribute in creating a new country, but this is America. And this is terrorism. And there's pedophilia. Rampant pedophilia. Like,
I'm scared to ask. When you say rampant, are we... Initially, I was skeptical about all these human trafficking and child trafficking claims, but I realized that I tended to live in areas that were much more straight-laced and where people were less likely to give excuses for it. But the Pacific Northwest is a whole different region. And
sorry.
What you told me about someone you knew who made excuses for it, okay, maybe my sense of how things work in your region is just completely different from the way things are in Minneapolis or in DC.
I mean, it's different than Texas. I left Texas with thinking like, oh my God, all these white supremacists down here. And then you come up here and it's like all fucking white supremacy. And you're like, oh, okay, that's not on the fucking brochure. It's the same thing with child trafficking and, all these different gangs and groups. And, you have these kids who think they could just do anything, say anything, be anything, fuck anyone, do anything, think anything at all times. And the permissiveness that comes to that, it's like most of the same people in Antifa, even this guy I was just talking about, I'll call him one of the sane ones for all this crazy shit because he caught it on earlier than I did. He got like a month or two into that and he was like, okay, this might be a cult. Me, I'm like holding out till 2020 being like, well, I'm sure there's a perfectly valid reason for all of this. So he was less retarded than I was in that sense. But the ones you have hanging on right now, they're devoted. They're in it. It's a certain breed of people at that point, because all the original people in the beginning were like, okay, we were anti-pedophile, anti-racist, anti-homophobic, and now you're all being homophobic, racist, and pedophilia. So when all those people filter out, and you're here a couple years later, and you have all the newbies who are only accepted under the terms of the people that were left from being filtered over, well, we're at this point in the way I'm seeing it is we're probably looking at a new wave of management. And when you have a new manager come into a corporation and they're the fund manager, well, then no one's checking the work computers, are they? And I think that's kind of what we're dealing with here. Is I think there's probably less of an incentive to report it because it's so rampant. And you've seen it on Andy Knows page a lot where there's like child pornography charges for Antifa members up in Portland. I remember there was one sting. I think there was like an Antifa radio station and the guy was involved in that. And it's like, You know, they share pictures like they share drugs. It's a community. Everyone wants a community for their own sick little freak shit. And it's like, yeah. Yeah, and I think that would make them in the same way that earlier on people could probably come in and traffic drugs to Antifa. People could probably come in and traffic child pornography now pretty damn easily on those conditions. The same way you could probably walk around a pride parade and have a fucking shoebox full of fucking pictures you shouldn't fucking have. Half the people there would probably accept them. If you went behind a bush and you're like, see what I got. These people are sick fucks.
Okay.
It's fucked. It's so fucked, but it's children are a currency. And you all, I mean, you all seen Sound of Freedom? We've heard the documentaries. Let's be real. Most of those pictures of these kids, those kids are dead. Because these people got the pictures and threw them in a river. So these people are fucking satanic. And even with all that said, I'm in this Twilight Zone world where I'm yelling at this guy for pounding one of these motherfuckers' faces in. It's like, if we really want to deal with all of that, we have to think strategically. And we have to know when to be violent and when to be vigilant. But right now is not the time for violence. Because the reality is these people are fucking retarded. They are brain dead. They are fucking sick. They aren't thinking about the consequences of their actions because there are no consequences for your actions here. So get them on that. Expose them on that. Get them cocky. You know, people should be going around and getting these fuckers with undercover cameras. We got Google Glass now. We got all the technology in the world. Everybody can go be a James O'Keefe. Go start a YouTube channel and just post 1 or 2 fucking videos of something crazy going on in your town just to fucking get it out there. Like, especially with this new regime coming in, if Kamala decides to steal the election, and I will say if Kamala decides to steal the election, what's going to happen is we're going to see a new wave of internet censorship like we've never seen. So you might want to start speaking out now, because this channel might not be here in a year and a half. Who knows what fucking rules that witch is going to fucking put in. This channel already fucking gets bombarded to hell. Larry's second episode, he had 70 plus views the other day. He got knocked down to 30. Again, it's always the videos where I talk about happiness and unity. Anytime we got on anything sad on that video, we changed the subject. And we kept the theme of choose happiness and choose love. Our corporate overlords did not like that shit. They like the ones about the towns burning down, though, and people blowing their heads off. Those videos never get censored. But the ones where I'm like, hey, choose better heroes, make new friends, have better conversations. YouTube's typically like, fuck you. Don't talk like that. So maybe if we all started talking like that in mass, it would help various different individuals and different channels and different people not get hit so hard. Because if it's happening all at once in a wave, there's really no holding that back. Everybody has the power to have their voices heard. Everybody has their stupid little black box that they walk around with every day. Just fucking say something. Put it on the channel. Put a picture in the profile picture and be like, this is my piece. This is my story. This is how I feel fucked. Or come here. You know, we ain't even got to talk riots. Like, just what's been going on in y'all's neck of the woods. Like, let's open up the conversation. Because, like, everyone needs to talk right now. They don't want us to talk.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Now, I don't know if it's there are several possible reasons why YouTube might be trying to censor happiness and unity. But yeah, we are being censored. And so much of what could make things better is just people talking to each other, and that's being made harder and harder and harder. Probably because there's so much reliance on increasingly corrupted media, and the people, a lot of the policymakers think, oh, the media is more trustworthy than these conspiracy theorists. And they forget how corrupt the media is.
I trust Larry more than I trust CNN. Dead ass. I still want you and Larry to meet the mystic and the cynic in the same room I think it could be a beautiful thing. You would love him. It's like, really, it's like, as crazy as conversations get, and I guarantee you they're going to get fucking more wild. Like, guys like Larry, like, when I say I used to fucking go out every night and every day with him, it was just like, you got this old man just blasting pound after pound after pound of dab on his back porch. He had his own refinery, and he's like growing his fucking weed, and he's just like, hey, come taste this, come test this. And we would just get locked into conversations about the universe and the apocalypse and angels and demons and devils and mysticism and religion and theology for hours and hours and hours. And whenever I was in the protest, Larry was kind of one of those voices in the back of the head like my mom, where I'm like seeing something get smashed or I'm about to fucking do something. And he's just kind of in the back of my head like, what are you doing, man? Like, this is my town. This isn't right. Like, imagine Larry walking down the streets as a younger man thinking about destroying his fucking history, you know? And it's like, it's funny because, like, I made that Uncle Iroh Meaningwave music video, and when I made it originally, it's like I wanted something for when ex-Antifa guy got out of detox, because I wanted him to have something positive to come out to. And then after the course of this week, I'm looking at Uncle Iroh in that video, and I'm like, fuck, that's Larry, and I'm Zuko. And Larry's a big reason. He's one of the ones who told me, he's like, you need to back off this shit. You need to choose love. You need to choose happiness. And you know what? If it worked for me the first time, I'm going to take it the second time. But they want to keep conversations like that from happening. They want to keep people like that from reaching others. And it's like, whether people want to come on this channel and believe them or not, because I know a lot of it's wild, but I leave those conversations smiling, even if it's dark. Because Larry, he's like me, and he's like this guy, except a little more. He's seen more life than most people. He has survived a lot. He has looked the devil in the fucking face. He's lost people in his life. He's kind of like Forrest Gump. He's a character that's popped up multiple times in history to where I'm just like, holy shit, you were fucking there. And you know, there's been part of me that's gone to want to know him over the last few years, where I want to catch him on some bullshit, but he's just always so fucking consistent, and he always comes with the receipts, and he's just a good fucking guy. And they want to keep good guys down, and they want good guys blowing their fucking brains out and making them feel like they can't defend their communities unless they fucking kill or kill themselves, so that everyone else around them can feel safer because they're such pieces of shit. You know, the society gets into your head that there's a protective instinct in like young men right now that's being suppressed, and as it's being suppressed, it's manifesting itself in anger and violence and outrage.
Yes, this isn't a new thing. Young men, if they can't be a protector, they will be a predator. There are three psychological pillars of masculinity: provide, protect, procreate. Yeah. Procreation's harder and harder than it has ever been. Mm-hmm. Providing is harder than it has. Well, okay, some of it's easier, a lot of it's harder. The economy is kind of fucked right now. Mm-hmm. Protection. A lot of the traditional mechanisms of men feeling like they're a protector have been ripped away from them. The military. We're a smaller military, and it's been kind of ripped through by all sorts of ideological harassment. The police has basically been shrunk and delegitimized. How can a man feel like they're protecting people?
And I mean, that's what we're seeing with Thomas Crooks. That's what we're seeing with the new shooter. It's like, I don't know what's going on in their heads, but something tells me they want to protect their country. And I don't agree with it. I don't believe that they are protecting their country, but I believe that they believe they're protecting their country. And that's... I mean, there's some young men out there who think the only way that they can do their part in this world is just to go gun down a gay bar and to get rid of half the faggots in town so the town's a little cleaner. You know, or, oh, these kids at this elementary school, they're just going to grow up to be assholes like everyone else anyways. Maybe my way of protecting the world is to make sure that they can't go and do damage to everybody else like the people did to me. It's like, it doesn't have to, the idea of protection doesn't have to be benevolent, if that makes sense.
That's the traditional excuse for tyrants, that they are protecting people from something. That doesn't mean it's always true. That doesn't mean that the tyrant is right. That doesn't mean that the tyrant is better than whatever they're supposedly protecting people from. Or that it isn't just invented by the tyrant. Let's remember, Mussolini invented assassination attempts against himself for an excuse to repress people.
That's a scary one too, is the amount of people who think that Trump's doing this to himself right now. It's like, yeah.
At least the first one.
Yeah, I can get more excuse for the first one.
The first one, any bullet that would kill a bystander, and that is that close to Trump's head, that is not a fake assassination attempt. That is a very, very easy way to kill someone.
I was talking to someone the other day, and they were telling me, they're like, I think Trump faked it, and he's just trying to gain support and stir up sympathy. And I'm like, okay, I think that there's a conspiracy, but I don't think it's what you think. And I started to say, like, there was Thomas Crook, but then there was another shooter here, and then we also have what's happening in the Water Tower. And I just got laughed at, and was like, what, are you going to go all talk to me about Lee Harvey Oswald now and JFK? Is that what we're doing now, the grassy knoll? And I'm like, yes. How is that so much more unbelievable than what was just proposed to me 5 seconds ago? I'm willing to, like, say there's a conspiracy here, but it's like well, that's just too crazy for me to believe. It's kind of the same as, like, whenever my grandmother's growing up and I wanted to be the rebellious kid and I was thinking about things a little differently. You know, she thought about rapture as literally left behind. We lose our clothes and we raise to heaven and we fly to the sky. And I remember just telling her, I'm like, or what if it's just like when the last Christian dies? Like the last true Christian soul, what if the last true Christian on earth dies and that's the rapture, is when the process is complete? And she literally laughed at me. I remember being like 11 or 12, and she's like, you need to stop watching those sci-fi movies, is what she told me. And then we moved on with the conversation. I was just like, huh. And it's the same kind of vibes I'm getting right now, to where it's like, we can all be talking about the same thing, but we've treated it all with such religious grandiosity that the idea of someone saying something else completely similar is, I don't want to say treated like treason, but it's treated kind of like, how the fuck could you possibly believe that? That's stupid. Anyway, here's my stupid theory, and it's like, well, what if both, it's so weird.
Smugness is like hardness in metal. Something that is very hard will not be easily dented, but it can be broken. Oftentimes with very bad effects. Smugness in politics will cause people to repel information, but if that smugness is broken, can leave people feeling very, very broken.
Yeah. No, and I think that broken smugness, it's something that actually kind of worries me in my response to things. Is there's been so many times over the last few years where I feel like I've been trying to tell people, like, hey, you need to, this is communism, this is causing damage, this is causing me psychological harm, this is causing you psychological harm. In some cases, something I might be discussing might lead someone to physical harm. And there's just, whenever people get so smug and locked in their shit, they're just kind of like, there's instances where I've been looked at to where it's just like, why are you being so brutal with me right now? Why do you feel like you could just say these things right now? Why are you not dancing around my feelings? Why are you not saying what I want you to say? It's just like, I'm not here to tell you what you want to say. If you're going to be my friend, then you know damn well when you're being stupid, I'm going to tell you you're being stupid. Welcome to being my friend. I never say it so harshly, but try and tell people like, hey, this is an explanation for why you're kind of dealing with some of the things you're dealing with. And this is what I'm noticing in you as a friend. And there's like a lot of times there's like this like resentment or this resilience of, well, you're just a know-it-all and you're always on your podcast and you're always just doing this and you're always reading. And, not all of us have the time to deal with this 24/7. And not all of us can be educated in these issues. And it's like, okay, well, that's why I'm trying to like just tell you, like, as someone who is like, this is just what I'm trying to share with you. And, sometimes whenever that realization comes in these moments, which I could think of millions, there is kind of this like brokenness or resentment where it's like, I don't know. It's like I was sharing it with you a little bit before. Like, it's in the story on this channel. I've talked about my little sister-in-law being trans and how I was complicit in that. And we told my mother-in-law, like, no, your kid's not autistic. You need to send her to the gender clinic, and that's the right thing to do. And da 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 da. And she's a boy, he, him, and you respect that. And years later, I'd been in my part in that because we were noticing things. Again, this has been discussed prior. You can go back and listen to it. But I feel a lot of things right now because I know that the kids backed off the testosterone stuff as of the last few weeks, but no one has said it to my face. Even though I'm the only one in the house who's like, hey, kid, look at these transitioner documentaries. Just watch a couple of these interviews. Explain to me what's going on with you. This kid's starting to go from the word, dysphoria to euphoria. This kid dropping out of school to make fursuits. The fact that this kid's just now drinking and smoking, living with a pedophile. Mother thinks that she's a fairy. There's all these things to consider. But now that it's gone through, it's like, now that I feel like the smugness is broken, there's almost kind of like this like puppy dog look, but also the silence of like, I mean, I'm the only one that was in this kid's life that was like reaching out to therapists, that was trying to like read books and figure this shit out. And now it's just like no one can like say anything to me about it. And it's like, I get that it's left them broken because now that these people have to deal with their own consequences. Like I did earlier on, and I was trying to tell people like, hey, eugenics, WPATH files, look at what's going around, look outside, everyone. Listen to this kid. Why is no one having a conversation with this kid? Why is no one listening to this kid? Why am I the only one talking to this fucking kid? Why is everyone else checked out? No shit, the kid's trans. But now that even though the kid's dropped out of school, the kid's still hanging out with friends more than ever and has a relationship. And now that those needs are being met and the kid feels like being taken care of, I imagine that's probably a large reason why she's not injecting herself with a needle every month now. But it's seeming like no one's going to tell me that to my face. I just have to hear it in passing, and I'm just kind of like, what? And then I'm just sitting back like, I'm going to let to see how long it runs. I wonder how long it'll take for people to... I don't even want to hear you're right. Maybe an I'm sorry for demonizing me to this child, for making it seem like I was the bad guy, for making it seem like my interests were irrelevant or stupid or dark or didn't have anything to do with anything, despite the fact I was on this gender dysphoria and trans shit before I even moved into this household. So it was a pre-existing interest, and who is anybody to take that away from me? But I also agree, I was watching a Stephanie Wynn video with Joshua Slocum the other day, and one of the things she said, and they were talking about ROGD kids and shit, was sometimes an abundance of information isn't always a good thing. And I do feel like that was a flaw of mine, to where maybe I came at it with so much information that for other people, a little bit for me is a lot for other people in a lot of different fields. So part of me is like worrying that maybe I overburden this kid by putting it on. But then I'm like, well, this kid also started injecting themselves with this at like 14, 15, and is now a part of a whole fucking eugenics scandal that is historic in nature. So there's also the part of me that's like, well, you're in the big kid space now, so you should probably know about these things. But then I worry about just like, maybe I push too hard. But then I'm like, also the kid's not on the needle anymore. So it's like, maybe it did work in the grand scheme of things, but it's just such a weird place to be in, man.
You you'll probably never know. That's one of the tragedies of this, but that's why it's so important to do things out of the right intention to try to help people and not just hope for any special outcome. Do your best, and you have to take pride in doing your best, because quite often that's the only thing you'll get, even if the good outcome happens.
And that's all I wanted to do. Is I wanted to do my best by this kid, because I was looking around and I'm like, well, no one else is. Yeah, we don't know if this kid's dad is dead, because just like every other fucking trans person I met, there's no fucking father. The last time he did show up, he caused a lot of trauma, scared everybody, banging on the window, let me in, let me see my kid. I'm just also worried that with the amount of obliviousness and neglect and uncaring that went into this kid, that medical problems are going to start to arise, and she's not going to be equipped to recognize them. And I'm really scared for the long-term effects of what already's happened, because, again, I've watched this kid deject for like a year or two, and it's just like, I mean, probably more at this point. I've seen people on testosterone. The changes were not happening. Minor. And this kid was told to go to YouTube or TikTok to learn. So, but I'm just a conspiracy theorist. I'm just too involved in politics. I think about things too much. I talk too much. You know, I'd literally be talking to mom about this, and she'd be like, okay, this is a lot for me. I need to go to my bubble now, is what she would say.
What?
When I'm talking life or death with her kid. Okay, well, I have to go to my bubble now. I'm like, well, at least you're fucking saying it. The bubble's gonna kill people. The bubble has to be popped. There's literally a whole SpongeBob episode about that. SpongeBob's going around with his bubble buddy, and he's just going around, and he has his bubble, and he's just shitting on everybody's day, and it's just... No one could stand the fucking bubble until the whole townspeople, they're all surrounding SpongeBob with needles. And they're like, that bubble has got to go! That's kind of how I'm feeling right now. The bubble has got to go.
Moral fucking cowardice.
But do fairies have to abide by human standards?
Yes.
And it just... And she thinks I'm this ultra Christian now because I do listen to preachers and ministers and people who are Christian. There's this like... And other people around me too, where it's just like, I'm looked at as like this Christian conspiracy theorist now, and I'm like, okay, well, here I am talking about summoning demons and the essence of that in my channel. You know, here I am the other day reading the satanic text or listening to some Aleister Crowley. None of my interests have changed. They act like I'm just this ultra right-wing figure that just came in with Jesus all of a sudden, and it's like, no, I would talk with this woman about fairies in a heartbeat, because again, I think that this woman has seen light orbs before. I believe that this woman has had some experience that could be considered supernatural, and I think that mixed with her trauma, mixed with her drug use, mixed with all of the other stuff, has convinced her that she's a fairy, on top of the nature of transhumanism and the TikTok atmosphere and everything going on right now. I'm crazy enough to be willing to give her that. Like, you've probably seen something that societies have called the Fae in times of old. Who knows? I'm willing to have that discussion. But because she wants to be so bitter and resentful and narcissistic and controlling and scapegoat me on everything and do petty shit all around the house all the time to try and piss me off and set me off and debate me into saying something, it's like I have to look at the floor, bite my tongue, look away, and not say anything to this woman, because the more I become to understand narcissism, the more I understand she's looking for fuel, she's looking for a fire. And I think as a society, we can't leave psychology up to the psychologists. We have to understand things like narcissism. Just as much as we understand that water will drown you, I feel like we need to understand how narcissists behave. If it's going to be this goddamn prevalent. Because the thing is I can listen. I wake up like The same way I used to wake up every morning listening to gender videos. I actually had to go through and stop a couple days ago just to kind of get a switch up of the mindset. But for the last 2-3 months, I'd wake up in the morning and I'm like, let's listen to something about narcissism. You know, wake up in the morning, pour my coffee, take a shower, and spend 2 hours on narcissism. What it does to people, what it does to children, how it looks in narcissistic mothers, how it looks in narcissistic fathers. And I realized that, yeah, it's helping me around the house deal with her, but you know what? It's helping me deal with a lot of other people too. And I'm starting to realize, oh, this really is kind of everywhere. And of course, you can't just go around diagnosing narcissist. But the types of behaviors and patterns that I see in people up here, it very much is me, take care of me, take care of me, take care of me. Yeah, your thing, but really my thing. And it's like, guys, like, and I don't know, and literally the devouring mother, just what I'm living with, having that as a form of government, it all scales up. Again, fascism starts in the household. Very much understand that now. I feel like I break people's minds with this crazy ass bullshit. I wish I were lying. It would just be an amazing thing if this were all just bullshit. If this were just a great fabrication and one day you all learned that I'm just pulling it out of my... But I'm not. And if I am, then throw me in an asylum because it's physically real 24/7, day in and day out. It's hell. And it's bad shit. And it scares me because, I mean, this is like a 56-year-old woman. You know, the kids, they're the ones that are coming in with the real belief systems. Again, what's God's self going to try to do whenever they get AI in their head? Because God's self can get into everybody's heads now. Again, they're doing a whole thing right now in certain states where they're talking about a right to privacy of thought. And the reason they have to say that is because that right is expected to be violated in the near future. You have people, these kids, believing that they're demigods and interdimensional cyber beings. Talk about Batman Beyond. Seriously, these kids are going to do some crazy shit to where shootings will be a thing of old. You'll have fucking 14-year-old kids hacking into the water supply trying to get to lie. Because they can. And then why not throw a synthetic tail on that, you know? And that's the thing, is those synthetic tails are cool. They're too fucking cool. They're definitely going to be a thing. We're going to see people walking around with fully functional tails like something out of Hollywood.
How many of these people claiming to be an animal have actually dealt with animals?
I feel like some of them are probably dealing with animals. You know, there was this girl named, I think her name was like Lillian. I think it was Lillian. This was back in 3rd or 4th grade. 4th grade. So I talked about my school a little bit before. And went to elementary school down in Odessa, Texas, where all the kids were gangbanging in Hood, and they were all fucking each other in 1st grade because, I mean, obviously, as you get older now, that's a sign that something was going on at home because all the parents are gangbanging and fucking and doing all their shit. And it's basically what's happening here, but more gangster down there, in the sense that it's literally a criminal environment, whereas here it's more of a hippie crime. But there was this girl named Lillian. And the school never discouraged it. This was the only time I had ever seen this in my time in schooling. But she would come to school and pretend to be a dog every day. She would drool. She would run around on all fours. She shat herself. She would bite kids' ankles. And this was 4th grade. I was born in 97. Oh, you'd be like, what, 11, 12? Somebody like, let's just say 2008, 2009, before any of this shit pops up. So it was probably like that starting in. But, you know, where are their parents? Like, there's no parents. My kid would not be, no. If I had a kid that wanted to be a furry, fine. Go be a furry. I don't give a fuck. But that shit... And to be real, being a furry is a gateway to that at this point. I might have some concerns if my kid were a furry, and I think every parent should. is, it's not a safe community. It's like the Juggalo community. ICP literally has songs about dicing up and murdering pedophiles, and tying them up and chopping off their dicks and shoving it in each other's mouths and beating up each other with their legs and all sorts of crazy shit. The amount of pedophilia in the Juggalo community is fucking insane, and they'll all sing that song happily. So it's like, these kids these communities are in are gotten really tainted.
And if I act shocked, it's frankly because I am. I've probably seen a nastier side of life than 90% of law school students, and yet the stuff you're describing is crazier than the stuff I saw in my neighborhood in the 90s.
You should come up here. We'll just walk around town and smoke a joint, show you all the sights. We can walk under the hammer and sickles and dance with the tweakers on fentanyl. Or like the other day, I'm literally like leaving work, and downtown next to the fountains, there was a dumpster, and it was piled up with a bunch of garbage and signs. And it was like, Project 2025 is a modern day religious jihad. And then it was like, Free Gaza right next to it. And I'm just like, and it's just, and it's all, and it was trash, and everyone was high, and everything's graffitied. But just like day one I moved here, the hippies were over in the drum circle. Like, none of it was happening, surrounded by mounds of trashes. And I'm just like, it used to be a magical thing, and now it's kind of like walking through hell. I imagine walking through an ashy gray hellscape in some sort of horror movie, and you just see these demonic hippies in the background. It's like, it's more dystopian than anything. I'm like, this does not feel like peace and love anymore at all.
Okay, that's an interesting image. Demonic hippies.
They're real, man. A lot of these hippies up here, you got the hippies like Larry, who I believe are sent by fucking God and the angels themselves. And then you have the other ones who, yeah, they like living out in the woods and smoking weed, but what else do they like doing? A lot of twisted shit. Like, we got a lot of cults up here, and a lot of them are hippie-based cults. On top of all the new online cults that we got, because one of the blue states around, but the amount of cult escapees, the amount of people here have just casually been like, oh yeah, I left a cult, or my girlfriend left a cult. I'm married to someone who was in a cult. And sometimes it'll be Mormonism, and then a lot of other times it'll be something you've never fucking heard of. Oh yeah, she lived out in the woods over by Bend, and da-na-na-na-na, and they would do this, and they would paint this, and she believed she was this, and I'm just like, again, I wish I could remember specifics. It's just, it happens so fucking often, because, I don't know, it really is kind of like hippie territory. It's like, the way Oregon's structured, like I said before, is like Portland, Salem, Eugene. Those are the only blue areas. The rest are red, but that's the cities and the town. The rest of it's just woods and forest. So a lot of people just live out in the woods and forest here. Which is funny because everyone's just like, when the apocalypse goes down, I'm going to go into the woods. And it's just like, you can't even find a camping site now. What are you talking about? You ain't going into the fucking woods. Like, there's occupied territory. There's probably what equates to kingdoms out in the forest of Oregon. People, you don't come in, you don't come out. I mean, white militia training camps around here. So yeah, there's probably parts of the forest that you wander into and you realize you shouldn't wander into, and you never come back out.
And I just Googled Rajneeshpuram, which was a cult back in the 80s.
Is it Oregon-based?
Yep.
What was that one?
Well, it was a Hindu-based cult with a guru from India.
Starting to sound familiar.
They were famous for wearing orange. A documentary came out a couple of years ago, and an SNL skit was based on it. They are also famous for poisoning a big chunk of the local townsfolk.
Was that the one that was like the biggest bioterror attack? Yeah, was it you that was telling me about that recently? Someone actually just told me about that like in the last week.
I didn't.
Yeah, someone actually just told me about that recently. Because, yeah, it was like essentially food poisoning, but it killed people, right?
Yeah, well, I don't think it killed anybody, but it left a bunch of people really sick. Sick enough that they didn't go vote.
I mean, it's just in the way that they were treating COVID up here. They had there was like, and I think a lot of it was from Antifa and the left. I think they're trying to fabricate it, but there was a lot of messaging coming out from far right groups that was like, if you catch COVID, go spit on the railings of any local Jew or black person that you see, or blow your nose and wipe it on a gay person's door handle and shit like that. Nothing that ever transpired, but the creative thinking behind that and faking those notes, oh yeah, it was there. It was very much people sitting around in their living room like, how can we weaponize COVID if we catch it? And you gotta wonder how much of that too, how much of COVID was people being petty and trying to spread COVID. Like, I could be the guy who picks up an AK-47 and goes to Walmart and guns everybody down and gets shot in the end. Or I could be the guy that pretends to be a volunteer in an old person's home and spit in all their food and get the same result.
The irony is that spit is probably not a great way to transmit COVID.
True. But they didn't know that at the time. It was in the air at that point, Cyprian. People, I literally saw people walking around hazmat.
In the spit.
Did you ever see the hazmat suits?
Yes.
Yeah. The makeshift ones. Those are the ones that got me, where it's like, people are like, fuck, I don't have a hazmat suit, but I need a hazmat suit. And they went on Google and learned how to make them out of water bottles. That was wild. That was next level. I'm not getting caught off my ass. And it's like, well, kind of did if you think about it.
That is, that's been a, people are still sharing images of people in their homemade hazmat suits for comedy purposes, not instructional purposes.
I'll say here, you couldn't even tell. Ever since monkeypox came back, people are wearing the mask again. I'm like, you're covering the wrong end. God damn it. Like, you need a cork, not a mask. And it sucks because, like, it's old people. With old people, I get sympathy because I'm like, okay, you either are immunocompromised and you do need it because you're feeling sick or scared of getting sick. But then there's also the factor of the Democrats really fucking scared old people. They really fucking scared old people. But the rest of them are fucking obese fat fucks. I got one guy at work, and he's got to be 400 fucking pounds, literally. And then I walk past, because, like, I'll go pace the building sometimes, you know, get my steps in, and he'll be smoking a cigarette, and when his mask is off, he'll, like, turn and he walks away from me real quick. And I'm like, you need to worry more about the fucking Big Macs, buddy. You have been here every single day I have fucking worked. You are pounding cigarettes like nobody's fucking business. You're paler than all sin. Just switch some shit up a little bit, bro. It ain't the COVID. You're going to be fine.
Well,
it's
obesity
easier.
did make COVID a lot worse for people.
Yeah.
However, at this point, the COVID variants that are going around are just minor. It's a little worse than the flu, but it's not that bad. I mean, the original variants going around were bad, but they got mild very, very quickly.
Yeah. Well, and I think what it is, too, is it's an excuse for a lot of fat, lazy Americans to not go outside, to continue not treating themselves right, to have whatever little bit of victim status they can claim to have, because you only ever see these people in left-wing spaces. But really what it is it's a further excuse not to take care of yourself. It's a sanctioned reason to not work on yourself, be it physically, mentally, whatever the fuck have you. It's like these people are just sitting here like, I'm fine so long as I ignore everything and I put this on my face and I can just keep doing what I want to do. And it's like, it sounds so fucking harsh because I'm a guy who's like, damn, you're 300 pounds at one point. So it's like, I don't want to like be mean about that. But like the people I'm talking about here that are doing it, we're talking the chonky honkies. We're talking like 5 or 6 of me. We're talking like the earth is fucking moving when these people turn the corner. I'm like, is this going to be my first earthquake? Fuck, I've been here 9 years. It's about time. Like, we are not talking like the milds or the averages. We're talking about people who really need to work on their health. And it's just another excuse for not to.
They think a mask is going to protect them.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been there because like my first drug was food. So I would stress eat. My mother literally had to like bike lock the refrigerator and put a new lock on the pantry. And I still learned how to break into the pantry because she would go spend hundreds of dollars on food and I would like literally go and eat it. And I never understood why. And part of me wonders if it had to do with the medication I was on, like going on and off of it, like needing to fill something. But I was actually reading a Star Wars book recently that said it best. It said, a full mouth is a conversation skipped or something like that. Something to the effect of, if you're sitting over there and you're eating, no one's going to bother you. Like, people see you're eating and they'll pass on. It's kind of like that. And just kind of like it's kind of using one of the Wookiee characters to actually kind of to explain it as like a psychological defense mechanism. And I think there was definitely a lot of that going on. But we have such an unhealthy like relationship with food in this country. Like, I'm dealing with another eating disorder right now. I went from that and being like damn near 300 pounds to where like now I will go over 24 hours without eating and I have to force myself to eat. And that's been going on for almost a year and a half, 2 years now. And I haven't quite figured that one out. But like, it doesn't help when you have a government that just wants to bounce around and come up with shit like fat activism and fat positivity and healthy at any size. And it's like, no.
Have you seen the South Park special?
Yeah, the new one, the Ozempic.
Yes. It's true, though. Rich people get Ozempic, poor people get fat acceptance.
God, it's so good. Again, how many of these trans kids are obese? Because one of the things that I've noticed with this medication is it makes you obese. Oh, well, thank God there's a drug for that now, conveniently. I'm sorry, but like some of these trans kids that I've seen, again, this might sound mean, but talking about personal experience, we're talking like Violet, was that her name, and Willy Wonka? Like, some of these trans kids have a new shape, and it sounds so weird, and it sounds so fucking mean to say, but I mean, these kids are so dependent on drugs. It's like they've got them, whether it's social media or whether it's weed or alcohol or coke or ketamine or testosterone. Drugs are always going to be the answer.
The thing is, if people can't control their appetite naturally, a drug that does it does make sense. But when you're talking about trans, if people's sense of ego or sense of control is tied to taking those drugs, not taking them is going to be very traumatic for them. Mm-hmm. So there's a big fight over, should people on trans medication be allowed to join the military? Guess what? You don't always get supplies in the field. You don't always get time to take drugs. You don't always get the right drugs at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched videos. I'm thinking of one example. There's a GoPro where this guy spent like 9 weeks stationed at the top of a hill, and he's surrounded by like all these Iraqis or all these militants or whatever. And, you know, they would come up the hill, they would send drones, they'd send helicopter, but their goal was you hang out in the cave, you get them to fuck off when they come around, you stay hidden when you have to stay hidden, and you better make this shit fucking last. Yeah, throwing testosterone into the mix. Like, there's kind of a fantasy level of this shit. Like, the new Fallout show. I don't know if you watch that, but there's a random trans military character in there in the Brotherhood or the Enclave or whatever. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, all right, even with the sci-fi setting being the way it is, we're talking post-apocalypse, out in the middle of the desert, military setting like this. How does this chick have a mustache right now? It's like, and it wasn't even like full-on like trans moving over. It was just like kind of half-ass trans slap a mustache on this chick like an old fucking French play or something. And it was just like, that kind of got to me as not making sense, because it's like, I feel like we live in the society of convenience where everything will be provided to us at any given time. Again, we forget about beginning of COVID so fucking quickly. But when people are making these decisions, when they vote or when they talk about it with their friends, they really aren't considering the real life implications of what that could entail. And a lot of this trans shit is a fiction. Gender dysphoria is very, 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 very real, very severe, very debilitating, very interesting to learn about. I love learning about gender dysphoria, all of its different variations, how it operates in different genders. It's so fucking fascinating. The human mind is such an amazingly complex thing. And thank God that we have transitioning for people who need to feel that alleviation, have that space. And what a wild thing that we can exist among people who, you know, once we're walking around looking like women, looking like fucking Buck Angel now, where it's just like, God, that man's more of a man than I'll ever fucking be. Jesus Christ. You know, that's fucking neat. That's variety. That's the spice of life. But what this has come in and done is it's distorted and perverted and bastardized all of that with lies and deceit and trans ideology, to where, you know, there's no gay ideology. There's no bisexual ideology. There's no lesbian ideology, but there's a trans ideology. You know, it's because gay people, we didn't have to lie about who we were. I mean, we did for a certain extent, but the whole point is like, you know,
there was something real there.
Yeah. Yeah, this just isn't real. It's the fakest claims coming from some of the fakest people. Or just some of the people that haven't had an opportunity in real life yet. You know, because I wouldn't look at a lot of these 15, 16-year-old kids and be like, you're fucking fake. Some of them I would be. But a lot of them, I'm just like, no, you just ain't lived yet. You know, you haven't got to be a woman or a man yet. You haven't got to go to all the cool parties. You haven't got to go on all the dates. You haven't got to go see all the cool sights and travel. You just ain't got there yet. It's fine. Like kids, I mean, I don't know if you felt the same way growing up, but I wanted to be an adult so fucking fast. And now I cry thinking about how fucking stupid that was. Because I'm like, shit, now that I'm here, it's so much work. I could just be sitting down watching SpongeBob and eating some goldfish and playing with my lightsabers. Instead, I gotta go to my job and get yelled at and deal with all these fucking drug addicts and people fucking trying to kill each other. This isn't fun.
I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't expect to be dealing with lots of drug addicts as an adult. And at least in my area, I'm not.
That just means they're keeping a secret so far. It's whenever the secrets start breaking and you realize that everybody was a drug addict all along.
Okay, I'm not counting alcohol or caffeine.
Oh, fair. Yeah, no. Granted. God.
Also, I live
so healthy.
Also, I live in the nice part of town. As a kid, I lived in the really bad part of town.
That is a goal of mine, to say that I live in the nice part of town. That's not going to happen right when I move to Texas, but if I can make the right moves and get my shit together and get a good career going, I don't need it to be the nicest side of town. I just want to walk outside and feel like people are taken care of. You know, families with their kids, people walking their dogs, birds flying overhead, pretty gardens and shit. Because, like, the thing is, it's so beautiful here. Eugene is probably one of the most beautiful areas you will ever see. You walk around town, or it's changed more recently, but it's like Lord of the Rings or a fantasy movie. You're seeing like plants and like people have like a whole forest in their fucking front yard and you can like barely see any house behind it. And all the neighbors are trying to outdo each other. And then there's like local gardens. And then like they do this fun thing here where there's like these little book stands with like these glass cases in a bunch of neighborhoods. And it's like, read a book, lend a book. Yeah. Yeah. Like those are fucking awesome. And it's like, there's so much cool shit here, but now you might get stabbed in front of the pretty bush. Or now someone might go spray paint ACAB on the little book thing. And it's like, again, it's all just been bastardized by people who are simultaneously saying, we're the best, we're number one, Oregon number one, everyone's more backwards than us. ACAB, though. And then the immigrant crisis is not getting better. I mean, God, I felt like I was flashback to Texas yesterday. I'm just going out there to smoke some weed on my break. There's this homeless woman with a fucking luggage going across the street. She's like, I've never seen so many goddamn Mexicans in my fucking life, these dirty motherfuckers. And I'm just like, whoa. I'm just like, all right, I'm back in Odessa, Texas as an 8-year-old. Jesus fucking Christ. And I'm just sitting here like, I don't put it like that. And a lot of nice people, but yeah, it's a lot of fucking Mexicans right now. I do agree with that analysis. I don't know what happened to you, but it's different. The culture is switching, and people here are not handling it that well because, again, one thing that I learned here, there's more white supremacy and more racial sentiment here than down in Texas. Because everyone here got all high and mighty with their shit, whereas Texas, growing up, black kids, white kids, Mexican kids, they all hung out and they all said the N-word with an A at the end together. Not saying it's great, not saying I do it now. But what I am saying is, like, as the generations progress, the younger and younger generations, like, that taboo around race and racial issues, it kind of went out the window and turned more into jokes and jest. And a lot of the black kids would roll around with Confederate flags and shit, Whereas here, it's like, they didn't have quite that integration. It's just kind of it's just kind of this holier than thou attitude.
They felt tolerant from afar, but they didn't actually think about what it's like to live with people with a different skin color as their neighbor.
Yeah, there's like, so go ahead, sorry.
There was a phenomenon where some of the biggest strongholds for the KKK weren't the Deep South. They were New England. You had a lot of people in New England that prided themselves on being tolerant because they felt, oh, those poor black people in the Deep South, which, and it's true, Souths were mistreated, but they didn't deal with the hatred they or many of their neighbors had for black people when they lived in those states or came to those states. It was just a kind of vague, I am better than you, you hateful bigot. Not I understand the issues, and I think there is a way we should all live together peacefully and equally.
Mm-hmm. And I see it in the school systems because my mom's an elementary school teacher, and I've then talked to people here in the education system, and there really is this attitude here of we're the champions of diversity, where when I talk to my mom down in North Texas, there's been all the Mexicans got replaced with Indians because I guess a lot of the towns in North Texas around Dallas, there's tech sector jobs. So they advertised in a lot of Indian cities and towns like, hey, come to North Texas, come get a job here. We'll help you with your status. We'll get you through, get you working, bada bing, bada boom. So, everybody's bringing their kids with them because there's a lot of kids in that culture. And, when I'm talking to my mom about the diversity down there, she's talking about that and all the immigrant kids from the South and the East and the North, and she could tell you all about their languages, and she's giving me a 411 on their culture, and she's giving me the names of languages that I can't even fucking remember because I didn't even know they existed. And I'm just like, well, you guys have all these programs for this, and you're doing what? And you guys can keep up with this, and you don't have to woke shit in the classroom? What the fuck is going on? And my mom's just like, yeah, and you know what? And I love it, and I love these kids, and I want to see more of it. Because these conservative teachers, these like white suburb like soccer mom ladies that are going and teaching these kids, they're not stroking themselves on their fucking ego and how well they treat children and how they're just going to accept everybody under the sun. They're just like, oh, we've been given something new, we've been given a curve, okay, let's adapt, this is part of the job, let's adapt, let's learn something new, let's make sure that the other kids are learning about their cultures too, so that these kids don't feel isolated coming in. Whereas here they play race war. So the black kids go over here, the white kids go over here, the trans kids go over here, the goth kids go over here, the party kids go over here. And there's going to be a lot of that to a degree at any school. But at least from what I sense talking to my mother, there is vastly less of that going on down there. Because they're truly diverse and they're truly integrating. And they truly are, for lack of better terms, the real anti-racist. The South loves everybody. The South is... not everybody. We all know the exceptions. But, like, people in the South have the biggest heart you've ever seen. Like, most places you walk, people will be kind to you. California, when I went, everyone was a cunt. Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. Pleasantries. I talked to everybody. cunt, 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 cunt. And then I went to Texas and I wanted to cry. I was just like, how are you doing today, sweetheart? Y'all come on in. Welcome in. All the southern pleasantries. And I'm just like, fuck, I'm back home. But, you know, everyone up here just acts like they're waiting for you at the border with nooses, waiting to check your car for marijuana, you know? And it's like, it's not like that.
That's a story that I've heard from a lot of people, not necessarily regarding Oregon and Texas, but it's a common pattern that the people who talk the most about how they're in favor of abstract ideals are those who least live up to it in practice. Tooting their own horn is different than actually doing the work.
Yeah. It's like anti-fascism. It's like, I feel like I'm actually doing anti-fascist work. I feel like I am calling out authoritarian behavior. I feel like I'm doing my part in trying to prevent fascism and communism and authoritarianism from creeping, or at least to where if it does, I can feel better about it. But, you know, like all the old friends I've talked about and all those people, it was just, they want to talk about being anti-fascist. You know? I think you're completely right in that. There's a difference between doing and saying. You know, because it's one thing to say you have certain ideals, but you can say you're against murder, but if you're sitting in prison for a murder and for killing somebody, it's like, okay. Like, you know, it's just, I don't know.
Well, I mean, what kind of person would, there's a danger to talking the talk, because it can make some people feel like they don't have to walk the walk. Mm-hmm. Okay. When I was a kid, I heard walk the walk, don't talk the talk lots of times. Mm-hmm. But it's a basic idea. There's people who just talk a lot and use vague terms and say, oh, I'm going to do this. I did this. Da, da, da. Did they actually do it? Did they accomplish it? Is there a lasting result? And you have a lot of people who look really good on paper and who don't actually do anything good or useful. That's a universal principle of human behavior. Uh-huh. Sometimes it happens in the military. You have a lot of people who get promoted really high and, oh, wow, he must have done a lot. No, he didn't. He just knows how to look good on paper. He can't actually fix anything. You have a lot of programmers who, oh, what did you do here? Wait, you just basically copy pasted code that other people wrote and were paying you? This morning, I attended a book presentation by a guy who was basically, he was relying on other people's analysis of the origins of the woke crisis we're in. And he's not totally wrong, but he's oversimplifying it, and he's relying almost exclusively on work that other people did.
You know, that's why I try to name drop in here. It's like, I don't ever want to like make it seem like I'm presenting an idea as my own. It's not trying to be like, oh, I know this person, or I met this person. It's to be like, you know, credit where credit's due. I didn't, you know, Joshua Slocum says cluster B, so I say cluster B. You know, I can't just go and take that for my own.
Yeah, but that's normal. That's normal intellectual dialogue. The guy was presenting this book. It was, okay, I'll admit it meets the academic standards of a book. I just don't think it was very insightful or new or useful. Mm. It's the sort of stuff that someone could probably throw together in a week and it would look decent. But I still note it didn't have a table of contents or an index. So there's ways to do things well and ways to just do things that look fancy that don't actually get the job done.
I've been wanting to tell this story for a minute. I'm going to go to the restroom real quick, but I want to tell you a story when I get back of when I started a fake art business.
Okay.
Yeah, so you want to hear about that time I tried to start a fake art business?
A what?
A fake art business.
More than the usual fakery in art.
I think it was inspired by the usual fakery. I've had a lot to play in my downward spiral, and I've wanted to tell this story for a while, but it's one of those, if I told it too early on, I feel like I would have lost people's trust. But,
Dude, so, I'm in politics. I'm used to liars.
Well, we're going to expose some liars, but I think that starts with exposing ourselves. Fuck. So, at this point, I'm drinking every day. I'm like 4 oldies deep. Cocaine, ketamine, pills, psychedelics more often than not. This is about the point the shadows are starting to come out of shit. And aren't going so well. And I'm working in an office at that point. And we had Microsoft Office Word on the computer. And I was fucking with different shit, but you know, I was point in my life where I'm so intoxicated, I can't hold a pencil, I can't do any art, I can't do anything. And a lot of it's because I lack the creativity and the willpower to do so. I thought that the drugs and the alcohol were going to be my inspiration, and that's how you got the cool shit. I mean, post all of it, yeah, it's kind of helped out, but it's like, it's more of the trauma that came with that inspires the cool shit you learn. But, so I started fucking with different filters for different photos that I fucked with minorly, with different like Microsoft Word filters. So you can give it like an oil effect, and then you can make it look like it was on a canvas. And then I print it out, and then I'd fuck with it a little more, and then I'd run it through some of the filters again. And then you'd have something kind of neat. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Because there was a little bit of personal creativity to that. Until the drinking and the drugs got worse, and then you're just like losing your mind, and you can't think of anything to do. And you're posting all this shit on Instagram day in and day out, and day in and day out, and day in and day out. And I called it, this is how good cognitive dissonance works, because I forced myself to believe that this was all true, and that I was really like, I had to believe the lie, right? The name of my shop was the Acidic Tricks Bazaar. As in the tricks the acid was playing on my mind as I was trying to sell things in a shop online. And there was pieces in there that were creative, that were unique, that I came up with some wild shit, and a lot of it was just like, that looks cool on Instagram, give it a black background, and slap a filter. And the thing that kind of went along with that was people believed it. And the equivalent of my art was, you know, now I have use for it my thumbnails. A lot of it was really representative of what the thumbnails looked like. Like that, at its best, it might have looked like that Statue of Liberty thumbnail I did. At worst, it was just literally black background filter. And, you know, it always had that, a lot of the time it had that black and neon shit. I tried to do some light touches, but for the most part, I was stealing other people's art, and I was trying to pawn it off as my own and convince myself and others that it was. The problem is that I was so intoxicated and retarded, I couldn't make an actual sale. The only time that I ever was able to get anything off was to some street drug dealers who might trade me something that I printed off in a printer for some pills and a line of coke. Which made me feel very low about life, because it's like, shit. You know, I still had all these conversations and shit, and like I was still like trying to make sales in the moment, because that's how fucking far I was gone. But yeah, I couldn't make anything happen. The most I ever made in cash maybe was $20, maybe. So it's like I spent all this time lying day in and day out, tricking myself, tricking people on Instagram, wanting to be this great artist, you know, even sending it to people like back down in Texas. I was like, look what I did, look what I did. I didn't do that shit. It was so weird. And it just made everything past that feel like imposter syndrome. You know, when I did start to tattooing again, it was just like, I felt like I never left that, you know, to where I have to be like, that's like a lot of what I do rely on now is collaging. And it's crazy because a lot of the things that I learned in that, I actually can use in art now to do something more real. And I like actually learn things with those tools. And I realized now I was just applying them wrong and essentially cheating and lying. But it's like, the thing is, the reason I felt like I could do it too is like I was seeing a lot of other people doing it on Instagram too. It's a very common thing. I just did it better minus the sales aspect. But it was a lie. It was a scam.
Well, it is the predictable kind of scam of someone with a little bit of creativity, a little bit of energy, and not a lot of experience with just how hard these things are and intellectual property.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, given your family background, I can't imagine you had a lot of reminders of just how detailed and how protective people are of their own work.
No, that's not true. That's where a lot of the guilt came in, right? My
Oh,
uncle, yeah. So my uncle who did the tattoo on my arm, he was one of the top 5 black and gray portrait artists for tattooing in the United States of America for a couple years there. I'm pretty sure. He's gone to Germany, Canada, Colombia, all over the world. Tattooed all sorts of different celebrities. Smoked weed with Wiz Khalifa. He's fucking. He's got like human skulls in his fucking shop that he got from fucking Germany, man. Like giant, magnificent oil Renaissance paintings. Like, dude is a fucking master. And I think I was trying to bullshit him. And I think I knew I couldn't bullshit him because, like, even my dad told me once upon a time, he's just like, yeah, me and your uncle just used to sit online and go through different websites, and we would just call out motherfuckers stealing different people's tattoos or designs, being like, we know that's not yours. So I know they were probably sitting there, like, looking at my shit, being like, yeah, he's losing it.
okay. A sense of imposter syndrome would be absolutely justified.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it's not unjustified, and it sucks too, because it's like my uncle's like my hero, artistically speaking. It's like I always wanted to be like him. I always wanted to pull off a portrait like that, and still do. Like, still doing amazing work. He almost got to tattoo Blair White about a year back ago, and that's one thing that, like, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? And she, like, backed out of the tattoo, but I didn't know that for like 7 or 8 months. And the whole time I was just like, my uncle tattooed Blair White. My uncle tattooed Blair White. And I thought it was just the coolest shit. And it kind of like helped get my shit together. Like, well, fuck, you need to work on your art. You need to work on your podcast too. Because, like, what a cool opportunity. What if you could have opportunities like that? But yeah, it's just like that fakery in the face of that authenticity. It didn't feel good. It did not feel good, nor should it have. But there's a lot of fakeness in this world, but it's the degree to which people believed me.
That's probably the biggest surprise I had. So, there are lies. There are obvious lies. There are calculated lies. There are lies to distract. But what surprised me the most was the lies that people told themselves and they believed it. And those are probably the most destructive ones.
And the thing too is, like, part of me wonders, it's like, how many people didn't believe me and they were just too scared to say anything?
I would assume that would include, well, didn't want to hurt your feelings or too scared?
Both. Which, I mean, is kind of like, I'm thinking that in terms of everything else going on right now with race and gender and all the politics under the sun. It's like, how much bullshit's just going on that we're just like, tight-lipped.
Well, I mean, Robin DiAngelo got caught plagiarizing a black woman's work, so...
Was that the one in I Am Racist? I'm going to go see that this week. You should go see it. We should talk about I Am Racist, or Am I Racist?
I didn't actually see that. I only know about that because of written stuff. So I don't know if they cover that in the movie.
Yeah, because I think there's something in there along the movie, at least along the lines of they forced her to play, or they tricked her into paying reparations to, like, one of their black studio producers. They're, like, playing on her guilt there.
I mean, Claudine Gay, the person who got in charge of Harvard because of her ability to berate people, actually stole the work of another black woman who was a conservative. She would never admit to citing the work of that woman who is also black and a woman.
It's the ones they try to protect the most that get hurt the most. Or claim.
A few lies might have a good effect. A lot of lies tend to have a nasty effect. And when people get too used to lying, they don't just hurt other people, they hurt themselves. Because Claudine Gay, if she had just toned things down a little bit, probably would still be president of Harvard.
Yeah. And Robin DiAngelo, it's like, unless you're really involved, a lot of people didn't know who Robin DiAngelo was, but the more she's fucking acting a fool, it's like, oh, we're all starting to learn that name now, which I think it should have been from the get-go. White fragility is I didn't read all of it. I read some of it, and it was probably a book I should read on the channel, actually, some of it, because it's just, I just read white and I replace it with Jew, and I'm like, oh, this isn't great.
Like, I mean, there's a reason why I say modern woke ideology looks a heck of a lot like Nazi ideology. Guess what Volksgemeinschaft meant?
I just learned the other day about black shirts. I thought there was only brown shirts, but I was talking with Malcolm over.
Fascism.
Yeah. I'm still learning a lot of new things. It's fucking.
I mean, I would like to juxtapose two things: Abraham Lincoln's Young Men's Lyceum speech and the Italian fascist slogan of "Me ne frego," I don't care.
I learned that one too. I laughed out loud when I heard that. I was like, oh, that's fucking familiar. I was like, it's the same as that, do what thou wilt by any means necessary. Yeah, I've heard that.
I mean, there is a reason why I say, oh, we've seen this again. It's like the 30s again.
You know, one point that ex-Antifa dude told me is he was mentioning, he's like, he'd gone into the bar and he'd seen the white supremacists and the Antifa people all sitting in the same bar together. And he's like, you couldn't tell the difference. All you had to do was take off some of the patches, and he's just like, shaved heads, black shirts, sitting in groups. He's just like, you couldn't tell. It's gang culture.
Yeah.
Fuck. Well, Cyprian, I feel like we should probably keep it a little shorter today. Is there any closing thoughts or anything you want to send the people off with today?
We've covered a lot, but I think one of the most fundamental things is, who are you? It's not just, will you smile when other people smile at you? It's not just, will you be angry when other people are angry at you? It's, do you think about yourself enough to have some idea of who you are rather than what other people tell you you are?
Yeah.
And there's always time to think about, okay, am I actually reacting to this the way other people want me to react, or the way I actually think is true?
And something from experience, too, is one thing I've noticed over this past year doing this podcast. There's a lot of people who just want to, they make you feel like thinking about yourself and your personal betterment and your growth is a negative thing. And there's a lot of guilt being thrown around for people right now for thinking about themselves and for taking time to work on themselves. And as someone who hasn't really spent a lot of time doing that in life, you know, thinking about myself to be sure, but never really taking care of myself, don't let anybody out there tell you that thinking about yourself is selfish or that taking care of yourself first is a bad thing, because sometimes that's what you really have to fucking do. I've been having to tell a lot of people, you know what, just fuck off and let me do me, because otherwise it's going to be really bad for me. And the only person that knows the inside of your head is you. Well, I think that's a good send-off. Well, I love all you guys. Love you, Cyprian. Everybody go out there, do some good shit. Expect some crazy changes on this channel. And yeah, peace and love. Y'all take care.
Kali-Yuga. So there's 4 ages. The Kali-Yuga. That go around and around and around. It's these giant blocks of time.
Akira.
Kali-Yuga. In the field of relativity, everything has a lifespan. So some really short, some very, very long. And there's these giant blocks of time. And down in the quicker blocks of time, there's these things called yugas. Ages. There's Sat-Yuga, the longest of the 4 ages. 100% bliss. Sat-Yuga. People live to be 100,000 years during the Sat-Yuga. There's Treta-Yuga, 3/4 the length of Sat-Yuga. It's 75% bliss, 25% non-bliss, and people live to be 10,000 years old. Then there's Para-Yuga, half the length of Sat-Yuga. People live to be 1,000 years. It is 50% bliss, 50% non-bliss. Then there's the Kali-Yuga, the shortest of the 4 yugas, 1/4 the length of Sat-Yuga. People live to be about 100 years in the Kali-Yuga. It's 75% non-bliss, 25% bliss, and it can even go down to almost 0. And Kali-Yuga lasts 432,000 years. And we're 5,000 years into it. So, the Kali-Yuga, it's a tough time. Kali-Yuga, it's a time of suffering. Kali-Yuga, it's not all bad, but the Kali-Yuga, you could say we all deserve to be here during this time. But they say there's these periods of kind of a recess, and it's the age of Aquarius. Our solar system, they say, goes around Osiris, takes 25,000 years. It's divided into 12. So there's these periods of 2,000 years or so, and we're just now leaving the Piscean age, going into the Aquarian age. And this may be the thing of a chance for 2,000 or more years of peace. So that's something nice to think about. I think you are, so powerful. You could use your good power to help that to get going in this world. This would be very, very good. The Kali-Yuga. It's a tough time. Kali-Yuga. It's a time of suffering. Kali-Yuga. It's not all bad, but the Kali-Yuga, you could say we all deserve to be here during this time. The secret is transcending every day. Every time a human being transcends, they infuse some of that pure consciousness that exists in the transcendent. So they begin to truly expand whatever amount of consciousness they had to begin with. This expansion of consciousness is the expansion of intelligence, creativity, happiness, love, energy, power, and peace. All positive. So you get a person meditating every day, transcending every day, they're growing in these all positive qualities, and the side effect is negativity is starting to recede from their life. So in the middle of a dark age, they're becoming a brighter and brighter light. They're happier and happier. Their relationships are improving more and more. They're getting more energy. They're getting all this stuff, unfolding their full potential, which is enlightenment. So it doesn't matter if it's the Kali-Yuga or any other age, they're going to get the big enchilada. It's enlightenment. You're home free then. Total fulfillment, immortality, total liberation. You step off the wheel of birth and death, and you're home free. The Kali-Yuga.